At the Interstellar Academy's commons, species from 100 suns mingled beneath glass arches, and humans were still an oddity. They were admitted for adaptability, linguistics, and an unnerving knack for improvisation, not for strength. To most cadets, Earth's designation as a Deathworld sounded ceremonial, a label historians loved and fighters ignored. Lena Ward ignored the whispers instead, ate her meal, and watched the room with the calm of someone used to crowded dangers. Lena looked ordinary by galactic standards. Soft skin, no scales, no chitin, no visible weapons beyond the knife required for cafeteria etiquette. The leather jacket she wore had been patched twice. The scars on her knuckles faded to pale lines. She smiled easily, laughed when spoken to, and never corrected the aliens who assumed humans bruised like fruit. That assumption had kept her safe enough since arrival. Across the hall, Krothos of the Veskari watched her with interest sharpened by boredom. Veskari were born under heavier gravity, bred through ritualized dominance, and taught early that hierarchy prevented chaos. Krothos had not lost a challenge in years. His people measured worth in decisive action, and he saw in Lena a public opportunity to remind the commons of proper order. The first words were casual, almost friendly. Krothos commented on her posture, her exposed throat, the way humans relied on tools rather than bone. Laughter rippled among his companions. Lena finished chewing, wiped her hands, and met his gaze without heat. She had learned at home that bullies tested reactions before committing force. When the comments continued, a few nearby cadets shifted uncomfortably. The academy discouraged violence, but it prized cultural exchange, and Veskari customs were often indulged. A security drone hovered higher, its lenses uncertain. Lena considered leaving, then remembered the warning she had been given. Do not escalate, do not explain, do not submit. Krothos stepped closer. His shadow fell across her table, and his voice dropped, confident and instructional. He explained that humans needed guidance, that weakness invited correction, that a small demonstration would educate the room. He raised his arm, joints locking to deliver a blow meant to stagger, not kill. Restraint, he believed, proved mercy. Lena stood. The chair scraped softly. She felt the old, familiar tightening behind her eyes, the inventory of distance and angle, the quiet calculation learned in playgrounds and on broken sidewalks. Around them, the commons seemed to inhale. Krothos' strike began its arc, swift and unquestioned, and Lena lifted her hand to meet it, not with anger, but with certainty. She was aware of eyes on her, of predators scenting drama and prey species freezing in practiced stillness. The Academy liked rules because rules made safety predictable, yet Earth had taught her that predictability failed first. Lena breathed once, slow, grounding herself in muscle memory and restraint. If she yielded, the lesson would be permanent. If she overreacted, she would confirm every rumor. Balance mattered. Somewhere, an instructor would be taking notes. Somewhere else, a child on Earth would be learning the same calculus with fewer witnesses. The blow closed the remaining distance, and Lena decided, with a clarity that surprised her, to end the question without ending the man. The room held its breath, futures narrowing to a single instant, and whatever followed would redraw the Academy's assumptions forever. No one yet understood that this was not a fight beginning, but a misconception ending quietly, decisively, in a raised hand. And the commons would remember the moment before impact far longer than the impact itself. Because certainty, once broken, never reforms the same way again. Afterward now, the impact landed with a sound that was not flesh against flesh, but force against refusal. Lena's palm met Krothos' forearm, skin compressing, muscles locking, and the Veskari's momentum collapsed inward like a door slamming into a wall. Pain flashed across his features, sharp and bewildered, because nothing in his experience prepared him for resistance that did not yield. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Lena felt vibration travel through her bones, familiar and manageable, while Krothos felt something give that was not the human. Gasps rippled outward. A tray clattered to the floor. The drone dipped lower, recalibrating threat priorities it had never needed before. Krothos snarled and drove forward, trying to overpower through mass alone. Lena stepped inside the strike, rotating her wrist and catching the joint at an angle that robbed leverage. Her other hand pressed against his elbow, not violently, just precisely, and the strength he relied on folded against itself. Surprise widened his eyes as his knees bent despite his will. "Stop," Lena said, her voice level, meant for him alone. It was not a plea. It was information. He did not listen. Pride surged where caution should have been, and he twisted, attempting to wrench free. Lena adjusted, shifting her weight, using gravity the way Earth had taught her. The joint locked fully. A crack sounded, dry and final, and Krothos screamed, the noise raw and uncontrolled. The commons erupted. Some cadets backed away in terror. Others leaned forward, stunned fascination overriding fear. Lena released the pressure just enough to keep him conscious, guiding him down rather than throwing him. He hit the floor hard, breath driven from his lungs, one arm useless. The hierarchy he trusted shattered in seconds. Security arrived late, weapons half raised, uncertain where authority lay. Lena stepped back, hands open, shoulders loose. Her pulse was elevated, but her mind was clear. She had not crossed the line she set for herself. She had ended the threat and nothing more. Krothos tried to rise and failed. His species prized endurance, yet his body betrayed him now, shock stealing strength. Medics rushed in, voices overlapping, scanners flickering in confusion as they struggled to categorize injuries that did not match expected patterns. Lena watched without triumph. She remembered scraped knees, broken noses, the first time she learned that pain was a message, not a verdict. Around her, whispers began, uncertain words forming new stories. Deathworlder, unarmed, barehanded. An instructor finally shouted for order. The room obeyed slowly, like something waking from a dream. Lena met the instructor's gaze, steady and unapologetic. She had followed the rules as she understood them. Self-defense, proportionate response. As Krothos was lifted onto a stretcher, his eyes found hers. Fear lived there now, and something else too, understanding. Not a technique, but of error. Lena felt no satisfaction in it, only a weary acceptance that some lessons demanded impact. The commons did not return to normal when the doors closed behind the medics. Conversation stalled. Eyes followed Lena as she retrieved her jacket and tray. She felt the weight of attention settle, heavier than the strike she had blocked. The Academy had witnessed an answer it never thought to ask, and questions were already multiplying. Lena walked out beneath the glass arches, aware that the moment would not end with her exit, only deepen, carrying consequences she could not yet measure, but would inevitably face. It was the first time she wondered whether survival would require explaining humanity or simply enduring its misunderstandings, until the galaxy learned that restraint was the most dangerous trait of all, alone, eventually. Lena spent the next hours answering questions in a quiet room that smelled faintly of antiseptic and ozone. The instructors were calm, curious rather than angry, and that unsettled her more than shouting would have. They asked about training, affiliations, augmentations, and she answered simply, none, none, none. She explained she grew up learning how to fall, how to block, how to stop without finishing. Several exchanged looks. Medical reports arrived, projected in clean light. Krothos's arm showed microfractures where density exceeded tolerance, ligaments torn by their own force. The doctor spoke in puzzled tones about human bone elasticity, tendon reinforcement, neural gating that allowed pain to be delayed without drugs. Lena listened, arms folded, aware that her body was becoming a lesson plan. An anthropologist joined the review and reframed the incident as cultural miscalculation. Earth, they said, was saturated with threats that did not negotiate. Gravity, weather, animals, microbes, other humans. Survival favored redundancy, quick adaptation, and restraint under stress. Lena added that children were taught early not to hit first, but to finish last if necessary. Silence followed, heavier than accusation. Word traveled faster than official channels. By the time Lena was released, stares had shifted from dismissal to caution. Predatory species washed her hands. Herbivores kept distance, but bowed their heads politely. Humans, few as they were, stood straighter, not proud, just less invisible. The Academy's social geometry was subtly altered. Crotho survived surgery and woke furious, then afraid. He demanded rematch, then refused visitors, then finally asked what Lena had done. A medic told him the truth. She had done nothing exceptional. She had only used what her world demanded of everyone. The statement unsettled him more than defeat. Administrators convened emergency sessions. Guidelines were drafted, softened, revised again. Physical engagement with humans was reclassified from trivial to hazardous. Cultural briefings were updated to emphasize consent, distance, and de-escalation. Lena's name appeared in footnotes she did not read. She returned to classes under quiet escort, not for her protection, but for the Academy's peace of mind. Lectures continued, yet examples changed. Professors paused before using humans as metaphors for fragility. Students asked Lena questions carefully, as if proximity carried risk. She answered when she could, declined when tired, and kept her temper leashed. At night, she called home and described the incident without drama. The voice on the other end sighed, relieved she was safe, and reminded her to ice her wrist. The normalcy steadied her. Earth had not changed because the galaxy noticed it. The central conflict had shifted. It was no longer about a single strike, but about how much of humanity could be understood without being experienced. Lena sensed the Academy bracing, recalibrating narratives to contain what it had seen. She wondered whether containment was possible. When a system learns it is wrong, it either adapts or breaks. As she walked the corridors, feeling eyes follow, Lena suspected the next lesson would test which outcome the Academy deserved. That knowledge weighed on her more heavily than fear. She understood escalation as a language others spoke fluently, yet she preferred silence. Still, silence could be mistaken for weakness, and weakness invited correction. Lena resolved to remain visible without performing, present without provocation. The Academy watched, measured, whispered. Somewhere ahead waited another test, less obvious than a raised arm, more dangerous for being subtle. She adjusted her jacket, set her pace, and kept moving forward, prepared to teach nothing, but to refuse being taught the wrong lesson again. Tomorrow would demand patience, courage, and restraint, qualities her world had forged without asking permission ever. Lena noticed the change not in policy bulletins, but in space. Seats remained empty around her. Conversations paused when she passed, and instructors addressed her with careful neutrality. The Academy had learned caution, yet it had not learned understanding. That tension pressed against every corridor, waiting for release. A formal notice arrived 3 days later, concise and bloodless. Humans were reclassified as high-risk biotics under provocation. Physical confrontations were prohibited without mediation. Lena read it once and archived it. The words framed her existence as a variable, not a person, and she wondered how many others lived inside similar margins. Crothos requested a meeting. The message surprised her more than the fight had. She agreed on the condition of supervision. When they met, his arm rested in a rigid brace, his posture subdued by something deeper than injury. He did not apologize. Instead, he asked why she had stopped. Lena answered honestly, because ending him would have solved nothing. Because restraint was the difference between survival and savagery. Because on Earth, power was proven by what you chose not to do. Crothos listened, struggling with a worldview that had never rewarded mercy. When he left, he did so thoughtfully, and that felt like progress. The Academy adjusted around her incrementally. Group assignments included humans by design. Tactical simulations added environmental hazards modeled after Earth. Laughter returned to the commons, softer, less cruel. Lena did not mistake adaptation for acceptance, but she recognized movement when she saw it. She remained herself throughout, refusing spectacle. When asked to demonstrate techniques, she declined. When rumors exaggerated her strength, she corrected them. She was not exceptional, she insisted. She was typical. That truth unsettled more minds than any display could have. On the anniversary of the incident, Lena returned to the Commons alone. The tables were full, the noise familiar. A Veskari cadet glanced at her and nodded, respectful, distant. No challenge followed. Lena ate in peace, aware that peace was earned repeatedly, never granted permanently. As she stood to leave, she caught her reflection in the glass. A human woman among stars, carrying a world inside her bones. She understood now that the Academy would never fully learn Earth without living it, and she would never fully explain it without betraying it. Some lessons resisted translation. Lena stepped back into the flow of the station, unremarkable again, and that was victory enough. Humanity did not need reverence. It needed room to exist without being tested. The Academy had learned otherwise than it expected, and the learning was not finished. Neither was she. She understood that fear could become respect or resentment, depending on nurture. In choosing restraint, she had offered the Academy a path that avoided both extremes. Whether it would take that path remained uncertain. Lena accepted uncertainty as the cost of coexistence. As she moved through the station, conversations resumed behind her, quieter but no longer hostile. Life continued, altered but intact. The galaxy would debate humans in councils and classrooms, but Lena would simply live among them, a reminder that survival was not an act of dominance, but of balance, learned on a world that demanded everything and spared nothing. That truth would ripple outward long after her presence faded from memory. For now, it was enough that the Academy watched, learned, and hesitated. In hesitation lived the possibility of change, and Lena walked forward carrying that possibility with quiet resolve, ready for whatever lesson tomorrow insisted upon teaching. The stars remained indifferent, but she did not need their approval to stand where she belonged. Humanity would endure regardless. Always.